It's time to transcend the matrix as we explore multi-dimensional realms of quantum consciousness. Holographic fractals of our souls have been dispersed throughout many different galaxies and parallel universes. Join me on this soul-retrieving, DNA-activating journey as we transcend the matrix right here on Truth Frequency Radio with me, your host, Suzanne Ross. Together, we'll activate the matrix for global ascension.
And now, your host, Suzanne Ross.
Greetings, beloveds, and thank you so much for joining me for this broadcast of Transcend the Matrix. And one of the concepts about transcending the matrix is that there are multiple matrices of time and space dimensions. Also, these could be considered consciousness grids, and there are different species on different consciousness grids, and so the human race has a consciousness grid, and you might consider this a spherical grid-like structure around planet Earth. Planet Earth being this consensus reality that the collective consciousnesses on this planet have all agreed to, coining the term consensus reality. It's a reality that we have come here to voluntarily as a soul inhabiting a physical vessel on this earth plane, and in doing so have agreed to participate in this particular flavor of reality, if you will, in what's known as the third dimension. Now, I have become aware that there are 12 dimensions, each with 12 different timelines, through researching the belief system of Theosophy. I really enjoy Theosophy. Theosophy came into being at a time when Madame Blavatsky really launched this particular philosophy, and she was able to tune in to Ascended Masters, and there's actually an amazing photograph of her seated in this queen's chair, and behind her there are emanations of Ascended Masters, and it's quite remarkable that this was able to be captured on film. Her books are intense. They are sophisticated, advanced knowledge written in her books, but they have been translated by more modern authors such as Alice Bailey, who also wrote a series of books based on the Theosophy that Madame Blavatsky was able to bring through, and Alice Bailey channeling Ascended Master Jawal Kool. And then more recently, Dr. Joshua David Stone took those writings and further translated them into an easier way to understand the philosophical concepts of Theosophy, and also in his books, which he calls Ascension Manuals, he provides practices, powerful practices and meditations, which you can engage in order to progress on your ascension path. And there comes a point where this sea has an awakening, where there is a self within this sea that awakens. And when this self awakens, it creates the first crest of a wave. And when the self awakens, it reflects upon itself, creating the second crest of the wave. And in that moment of self-recognition, in the recognition of Father and Son, the infinite Spirit is ignited, and the Divine Trinity comes into being. And here in this infinite sea of light, the Divine Trinity rests in perfect unity, in bliss, the bliss of a perfect union of souls. Then just like there was a stirring in the infinite sea of light that ignited the first self to arise, there was a stirring within the souls of the Divine Trinity, a stirring to know thyself by creating a reality within which they could exist. And so we are taught that using the same technique of reflection, like in the first awakening of self, when the first upward crest of the wave reflected on itself and created the downward crest of the wave, and then the infinite Spirit igniting in that moment of self-recognition, creating a triangle, a depiction of the Divine Trinity as an upright triangle, a tetrahedron, a three-sided pyramid. And always the source, light, is within. And so, with the knowing about this technique of reflection, the Divine Trinity reflected upon itself and created a mirror image of their triangle, an inverted triangle. With the bases of the upright and inverted triangles connected, they created an octahedron and the element of air. So now you have the tetrahedron, the Platonic solid representing fire, the fiery light of the infinite sea, the fiery light of source, atop the downward facing triangle, which together creates the octahedron and the element of air. And with the downward pointing triangle, the Divine Trinity created a perfect reflection of itself. And with the point at the tip of that downward pointing triangle, they were able to create a point in which a creation could begin. In order to create something that has a beginning, there needs to be a starting point. And you can imagine that this first point became the first sphere of creation. The downward pointing triangle, the creative Trinity, a perfect reflection of the Divine Trinity, achieved their mission to create a sphere upon which they could know thyself by creating an existential reality within which they could exist. This first creation then has a beginning, but fueled by the infinite source flowing into it, there is no ending, and it becomes the definition of eternity. Eternity that has a beginning but no ending, an eternal creation that expands into eternity. And so on this first sphere, the creative Trinity created things and beings, all in their perfect divine blueprint. And so who were these beings that they created? But the first 12 archetypes. Why 12? Just imagine that you have three beings: the Universal Father, the Eternal Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Trinity, each creating in all four directions. And so imagine a pyramid with four faces, and upon each one of those four faces, each facing in a different direction, and each representing one of the four elements, you have the Trinity of three creating in all four directions, and 3 times 4 equals 12. And just like the zodiac wheel, which we are familiar with, the zodiac wheel is broken down into 3 signs in each of the 4 elements. And so the first 12 archetypal beings are created, and they represent 12 aspects of the Creator's personality. And so these archetypal patterns become the definition of the eternal beings existing on what we could call the central universe at the core of creation. And at the core of the central universe is what's known as the Paradise Portal. This is a portal between infinity and eternity, a portal through which the infinite source can flow into eternity, allowing it to expand endlessly. And so you have an existential world with eternal beings existing in a state of divine perfection in this existential reality. But once again, there is a stirring amongst these beings to know thyself in a different way, in an expanded way. Here in this existential reality, they can be, they just are being. But with this stirring to know thyself in a different way, they imagine worlds in which they can do. They can experience by doing, and with an inner knowing about the ability to create with a technique of reflection and projection, they realize that they can project holographic fractals of these 12 personalities into a new mental construct that will be called time and space. And so Theosophy would tell us that they projected 12 dimensions, each of these dimensions representing one of the archetypal patterns. And within each one of these 12 dimensions, 12 timelines reflecting those same archetypal patterns or aspects of the Creator's personality. And so, with 12 timelines in each of the 12 dimensions, the souls project 144 soul extensions into time and space. And this is who you are. You are an eternal soul, projecting 12 aspects of your personality in 12 different timelines in each of these 12 dimensions. I believe this is the true nature of reality, an infinite sea within which we are all a drop, but the entire sea all at once, and an eternal realm at the core of creation where we are eternal souls. And then these eternal souls projecting holographic fractals of themselves into time and space, explaining the concept of the holographic universe. And as we know, the nature of holograms are that each of the fractal actually contains the whole, and that time really is an illusion, a movie, if you will, that your eternal soul So who are all these other soul extensions that you are projecting as an eternal soul? Who are they? Where are they? And what are they experiencing? This is a key question if we are to understand the multidimensionality of our being, and if we are to reunite those fragmented soul aspects and return to wholeness. And why is that so important? Because I believe this is the way that we evolve. And knowing that time is an illusion, and in the true nature of reality, there is only one eternal now moment where everything is happening all at once. We know all of these incarnations are unfolding all at once, and that's why psychics like myself can watch these movies and also teach others how to tune in to their own eternal souls and see through the eyes of their eternal soul, so that they too can view all of these multiple incarnations and reunite their fragmented soul aspects. And so here we are in this 3D timeline, and as we look around and tune into the other 11 soul extensions, we can complete our 3D incarnation ring, and then we can get off the 3D wheel. We can move through the astral realm and make a choice to serve the light. And when we pass our exams, proving that we are committed to serving the light selflessly, then the gates of ascension open for us, and we can walk through them and step into a higher dimensional reality where unity, peace, and joy prevail. A higher expression of our higher self as a 5D being. Of course, we are still expressing time when we talk about evolving and progressing through the astral realm and stepping into 5D, so that now 5D can unfold with a starting point and an ending point. For once we complete our round of 12 5D incarnations, then we transition through the 6th transitional realm and pop into 7D. And so it goes on and on. But if we can really grasp the concept of one eternal now moment, we also know that not only are we living in 12 different timelines here in 3D all at once, but that we are existing, co-experiencing actually 144 incarnations in all 12 dimensions. After my missing time experience, I was gifted with the ability to see interdimensionally and to not only view these other dimensions, but to interact with the beings there, particularly my own soul aspects dispersed throughout these different dimensions. But then also I was able to see through the eyes of the eternal soul of my client and view who they were being in multiple timelines of 3D and who they are being in multiple dimensions. On my website, SuzanneRossWellness.com, I offer 10 different sessions, but the 2 sessions that are most applicable to today's conversation are the Eternal Soul Reunion and also the Multidimensional Soul Retrieval sessions. During these sessions, not only do I reveal to you who you are being as these different aspects of yourself, but I teach you how to view these incarnations through the eyes of your own eternal soul, and then you can reveal to me who you're being, and this helps to develop your psychic abilities so that you can reunite all of your fragmented soul aspects and return to wholeness. Of course, reuniting soul aspects in higher dimensions also activates dormant DNA source within which all creation exists and within which we experience time and space. My guests this evening, Dr. Mitchell and Kathy Gibson, created a television series called The Living Soul. And I was so incredibly fortunate not just to have the opportunity to interview them, but to feature their remarkable television series on my internet television network, Sci-Spi.tv, SCISPI.tv, with this new genre, Sci-Spi, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. And Dr. Mitchell Gibson is the perfect example of a highly intelligent and highly tuned in being who shares his experience of interacting with interdimensional realms, literally projecting his soul into these multidimensional realms and experiencing them consciously in order so that he can share with others what these dimensions look like and feel like, what takes place in these other dimensions. And especially as he moves into higher and higher dimensions, they get more and more complex. And in the highest dimensions, you have beings who are actually writing the code of the realities in the other lower dimensions. Fascinating. In this series that is featured on Sci-Spi.tv, The Living Soul, he talks all about the soul, from its origin to its expression and ultimately to its destiny. I'm so delighted to be able to share with you this interview that I conducted with Dr. Mitchell and Kathy Gibson, and then I will play excerpts from their TV series, The Living Soul. What I can't share on air are the incredibly well done videos that are part of their series. These videos offer graphics and photos and narration that convey in such a powerful way the true nature of the soul. Enjoy this interview and excerpts from their television series, and then tune in to Sci-Spi.tv, because right now, for the next 2 months, we are offering totally free subscriptions to this network. This is our gift to humanity during this challenging time of the global viral event. When you go to Sci-Spi.tv, SCISPI.tv, you'll come to the TV guide. There, you'll see 7 channels. Their show is on the channel called Beyond the Matrix, the new spirituality of multidimensionality. Click on that channel and then you'll find their show, The Living Soul. When you click on their show, you can watch all of the episodes in all of their glory. This is a tremendous series that is so very well done. And on their show, scroll down to the bottom and you'll also see books and products that they offer on their website, Tybro, TYBRO.com. Some of their books are the Accelerated Healing book, Defense Against the Dark Arts book, Destiny Pairs and Soulmates, The Secrets, Divine Solar Magic, How to Find Your Spiritual Parents, and Building Your Spiritual Altar book, Inspiration is Within Reach, Meta Parables, The Collected Stories of the Master, the Rare Latin Magical Incarnation book, Rare Waters, Rare Herbs, Solaris, drawing sexual and creative energy from the sun, and the Healing Spells book. Then they offer advanced texts. The Tybro advanced texts are a one-of-a-kind creation to advance your consciousness and subconscious minds. These advanced texts are Acceleratus, accelerating the development of the body of light. Angel summonings. Angelus tablet. Octava, master temple level, spiritual power and text. Octava, temple level, spiritual power and texts. And more. Tune in to their website, tybro.com, Tybro, to check out all that they have to offer. When we come back from our break, you will have the opportunity to listen to my interview with Dr. Mitchell and Kathy Gibson. We'll be right back. Take a moment to breathe in all of this inspirational wisdom and knowledge, for you are the divine spark which emanates from the infinite source. You are that. We are that. Together, we are one. Take a few moments to absorb that divine truth, and we'll be right back. It's time to dive back in to the limitless and infinite as we transcend the matrix of limitations and dogma, as we reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Let's dive back into the infinite sea of pure consciousness. Welcome back. It's time to dive in to my intriguing interview with Dr. Mitchell and Kathy Gibson. Enjoy. I am so delighted to be here today with Dr. Mitchell E. Gibson and his lovely wife, Kathy Gibson. They are going to be hosting a show on our Sci-Spi.tv network called The Living Soul, which will be a conversation between Dr. Gibson and Kathy all about the living soul and the many different aspects of that. Dr. Gibson has had such an extraordinary life, starting out with getting his degree in psychiatry and then his residency at the Albert Einstein Institute. So many awards and all kinds of recognition for your research and your achievements in as a doctor of psychiatry. But then after a spiritual experience and being taught by a spiritual teacher known as Ma, your career took on a whole nother level that included spirituality. So maybe you can help us understand how you shifted from serving as a doctor of psychiatry to really now a spiritual teacher.
The story started in winter of 2004. And I was interviewing for a job in Charlotte where I was going to be medical director for a big hospital. And it was offering close to $400,000 a year. So it was a good job. There was a snowstorm, an ice storm that day. And we went back to the hotel. We took a nap. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, we woke up from the nap. And I heard a voice talking to me. And it was a male voice, wasn't my voice, but it filled up the room. And I thought, okay, either I'm going crazy or this is a voice of a god or some sort of deity. And the voice said, you can be a medical doctor and continue to practice medicine, or give that up and become a leader of men. And that's all it said. So I woke Kathy up and I said, did you hear that? And she was sound asleep. But we talked for at least a couple hours after that. And we decided that we would not take that job, we turned down the money, and that we would move to North Carolina anyway and start a spiritual publishing company. And I would give up medicine and I would start teaching spiritual concepts. And that's how it started.
And then soon after, you went to India to study with Ma?
I had gone to India a few years before that.
Oh, okay.
And I spent some time with Ma. And that really made me start looking at the practice of medicine. But the seminal event was learning a prayer called the Anabakor, which gave me the first of what I saw as real miracles. And that happened in like the year 2001, 2002, thereabouts. And that's when we really started looking at, wow, these miracles are real. We have to do something with that. But then the voice came and we went to Charlotte to get that job, and that just changed everything. The first miracle was of a woman who brought her father in, and a lot of people heard this story, but some of you may not. And her father had kidney cancer, stage 4, end-stage renal cancer. And she asked me to pray for him, which was kind of weird because as a psychiatrist, I don't really, deal with cancer that way. It's not my specialty. I deal with depression, sleep disorders, anxiety problems, schizophrenia, but not cancer. Anyway, she wanted me to basically address her father's cancer. So I prayed over that. I put my hand on his back, prayed over his cancer. She came back 2 weeks later. Actually, called a week later and said he was scheduled to have a staging laparotomy, but when they did the MRI, there was no cancer there. And when they went in to do the surgery, they couldn't find any trace that the cancer was ever there. So she came in crying. He came in crying. We all cried. We hugged each other. And I said, wow, this is spontaneous remission. But then my secretary, her sister developed liver cancer. And she wanted to take some time. I'll take about a month to be with her sister. And she had fluid on her stomach. She had fluid in her lungs. She had heart failure, and she wanted to go on to the hospice and just be with her sister in her last day. So I prayed over a little cross. The cross was maybe an inch in diameter, an inch in length. She put the cross on her sister, and a week later, her stomach went down, her heart failure reversed itself, and she started breathing better. The doctors did an MRI, and the cancer was not there. And that's
well,
when
those are miracles.
Yeah,
miraculous healing that was coming through you.
And that has happened literally hundreds of times. And it really made us look at the fact that there's something here. That we say this prayer over objects or over people, and these things happen. I don't claim to, have that kind of miraculous energy, but something connected to saying it and blessing these objects is causing these things to happen. There was a client who had a betta fish, which is kind of an expensive fish, that for all purposes was dead. It was floating upside down in the aquarium. She just didn't take it out. But for some reason, she started playing the prayer on a speaker toward the aquarium tank. A day later, the fish woke up. She called and thanked me. Thank you for saving my betta fish. I don't know what a betta fish is. But there it was. And that's when we really started looking at this power. And my wife had the insight, say, why don't we just record the prayer and start selling it? And we started selling, I can't even tell you how many prayers just over the counter in the office from her idea. I mean, just how did you come up with that idea?
Well, it seemed that only a few people would be able to take advantage of the power of this prayer if he said it over them. So I said, I think there's something to your voice and the way that we can record this prayer that more people will be able to take advantage of it. And I said, the only way we can do that is if it's in a recording mode. So we said, let's go to the studio and let's record this prayer. And then let's just start seeing how well it does for other people, some of your other clients who are coming into the office, and see how they respond to the prayer. And we found that many of the people of his clients who were coming in started getting better quicker. And they got better quicker so much that more and more of the doctors in the area were sending people to him because of how quick of turnaround that these people were getting better.
I had a 3-4 month waiting list. I couldn't possibly get to that.
Well, that was a brilliant idea, Kathy. Yeah, because there's certainly something about his transmission of the prayer. And that's what you call the miracle prayer.
That's right.
That's what we call
it. It's actually the Anabakor, and it's just the way that he says that prayer and the energy in his voice, along with the recording that's in the background, is what transmits that miraculous or divine energy that's inside of that prayer. And we've had thousands of people over the years who have used that prayer. And it does many, many things, not just for healing purposes, but if you're having financial crisis, if you're looking for better relationships, it really goes toward the need of the person who's using it and what their intention of using the prayer is for, that causes the miracles to occur.
And so now we give away the prayer free on our website. We used to sell it, but now we give it away free on our website at tybro.com. You can go there and download a free version. Mm-hmm. We have other versions now, but the original version that we recorded that had all those miracles, you can get it free.
Mm-hmm.
Bless you for doing that. And Kathy, I would like to focus on you. You had an extraordinary experience in 1995 that really shifted your perspective from sort of a Christian upbringing to a spiritual awakening.
Yes, it did. I grew up a Christian. My father was a Baptist minister. And for the first 40 years of my life, that is my belief system. And in 1995, I was going through separation and looking toward going toward a divorce of my first marriage. And I had 2 small children at the time. And I must have been under such stress that the Creator himself came to visit me. And it was during a time where, you know, how you have one of those heartbreaking cries or you don't know what you're going to do, that I heard the voice of God come to me in the form of a golden mist that made me fall to my knees, fall toward my children, and just be comforted in the divine energy of God's presence. And he spoke to me telepathically and told me that I had made some mistakes and bad choices in my life, and that if I was ever going to become the being that he had sent here, I would have to have some type of an awakening. And so I went and did all the things that God had told me to do. And during that time, I had a gnosis download go into my pineal gland, and there was information that was put into that download packet that God gave me. And those things are helping us to come up with the thousands of products that we've had over the years. So it was some experience that I can tell you that even now it just brings tears to my eyes, because it was such a profound experience to be in the presence of God. There's nothing like it. You feel like you're loved and bathed like a child, and there's so much compassion and love that's coming from God's being that you can't not have an emotional response from that.
Yeah, I would defy a person that defines themselves as an atheist to hear that voice, to have that experience and remain an atheist. You just couldn't. You really couldn't.
I was brought up in sort of a atheist household, and I just quickly, Kathy, want to share an experience I had on a mountaintop when I was also looking to get divorced from my first husband and also escape from the corporate world. And I went to visit my parents in the desert of Southern California and was rediscovering love and joy and laughter. And one morning I woke up in a panic that I was going to have to return to what I felt like was my life in hell and on the East Coast. And I was compelled to run to the top of this mountain at dawn one morning. And I ran to the top of the mountain. I threw my arms up and I said, I am miserable in the extreme and I see no way out. And in that moment, I was surrounded by this flash of golden white light. And out of the light came a voice. And it said, can't you see you've come home? You will stay here and heal yourself and many others. And you are loved more than you can possibly imagine. And in that, when I came to, I was on my knees. And I was looking out over this desert landscape in Southern California where my parents had a vacation home. And I knew it was the absolute truth for me that I was going to become a healer in the desert. So I have had a similar experience. And so I just wanted to share that because, you know, I can totally feel that power that comes
Yes.
from an experience like that, and the faith that comes out of it. So thank you for
That's
sharing
right.
that.
Right. Thank you
That's
for sharing
true.
yours.
And Dr. Gibson, you have written several books, produced extraordinary films. You're a documentary filmmaker and an inspired author, as well as a spiritual teacher. We are having this conversation today because I found you on Amazon Prime and your movie, The Spiritual Realms. And I didn't do anything for the next few hours except sit there with the remote control, and I kept pausing it and taking notes and pausing it and taking notes. I was so blown away by all these realms and dimensions that you can see and describe so beautifully. Tell me what inspired you to make that film.
We have an agent, Warren, who has an entertainment company called Reality Entertainment, and he had co-published a book with us called The Living Soul. And he saw a seminar very much like what you saw, and he said we need to turn that into a documentary. So we did, put it on Amazon Prime and about 100 other outlets. But it was based on the experiences that I've had clairvoyantly in other dimensions. Between learning the prayer and having clairvoyant vision, I have seen life and reality in other dimensions. I often saw some of my clients in other dimensions after they died. When I was growing up, my grandmother, God bless her soul, would take us to funerals for her social outlets. And we would sit like right up there next to the casket, because that's how my grandmother got her socializing on every week. So I started seeing the people that had died just standing around their caskets. I would see them in the casket, and I would see them walking around the church room, looking at people. Nobody could see them, but I could see them. And that's when I started sleeping with my head covered up. But one day I decided to follow one of them. It was a guy, a young man who had died in Vietnam. And he was maybe 20 years old, no older than that. And I followed him to where he was, and he went to a place that was in the underworld. And it wasn't hot fire and brimstone, but he was sitting in something that looked like a large waiting room. It reminded me for the world like the DMV, when you go get your license. And he was just sitting there like he was waiting on something. But it showed me that life doesn't end with physical death, that there is something afterwards. I talked with him, and I've since talked with literally hundreds of people after they passed. And then one day I was watching the sky, and I saw something that looked like a large white angel flying in the sky. And I defocused my vision, and I saw with just the peripheral edge of my spiritual vision a city that the angel was flying to. And so that night, I recreated the vision in my mind, and I flew into the city, and I saw this almost blinding white light surrounding these angels that were walking around just like we would walk around in any city or town. And that's when I began to understand that there are spiritual worlds both above and below our domain that exist just like other places. That mythology describes them very accurately. And that's where the spiritual world came from. My experiences in the spiritual worlds and other places.
Well, thank you for such an extraordinary description of these realms, because you're very specific, and then you have wonderful PowerPoint slides with illustrations, and it really takes you to these places. I live here in Sedona, Arizona, and so there's a lot of really spiritually inspired people here, and they talk about Shambhala and such. One day I was driving with my husband, and my sister and her friend were in the back seat, and we were just driving through Sedona, and I looked in the horizon and I saw a city hovering there that was like illuminated by light. And I was like, can you guys see that? There's a city, it's in the sky. And my husband said, oh, for goodness sakes, they're clouds or something that look like a city. And I'm like, oh no.
Have a drink.
You see the outline of buildings and everything. I'm like, pull over. He's like, you're lost your mind. But I have seen a similar thing. Yeah. And you're so right.
world that have videotaped and photographed those images of cities floating in the sky. So your experience is valid. It is not something you made up. It's been happening for thousands of years. It's the truth.
Thank you for that. And, you're right about that mythology. I mean, Egyptian mythology talks about the underworld, throughout. And then, of course, the seven heavens. There's so much mythology throughout the Far East and Egyptian, Mayan, that talk about,
Mhm.
all of that, the underworlds and the upper worlds. And so, thank you for affirming that. Now, another documentary that I thoroughly enjoyed was The Secret Teachings of the Universe. And you talk all about the primordial cosmic rays. Thank you for all the
Mhm.
scientific research to back that up.
Mhm. Yeah, the primordial energy that comes into this domain, uh, there are high energy particles that define reality for us. These high energy particles actually resulted in a Nobel Prize for the man that discovered them. And nobody knows where they come from. They are energy particles that are so powerful that mankind has yet to be able to create anything even a billionth of that power. And so it helps us understand where the energy comes from that creates the sun, the planets, the moon, the stars, that sustains life on our world. And the Secrets of the Universe looks at the different types of these particles and how they help interact with us to sustain us.
And assimilating these highly charged particles that seem to be really increasing in their prevalence in our environment. And that scientific research is so fantastic because, many of us will talk about that. Well, we have these solar alignments with these great central suns, right? And these solar flares are bringing in these highly charged particles. And people will say, well, where's the proof of that? And I watched a documentary and I thought, well, there's the proof. The energy from the sun has increased
there,
exponentially.
there are particle collectors in basically in every continent, every major city. Some of the things that look like cell towers are not cell towers, they're particle collectors. And when scientists measure these particles, the density and the intensity of the particle radiations, they are increasing. Uh, there are more of them. There are more highly charged particles being collected than any other time in history. You can do soil samples and do collections of samples from rock layers in different parts of the world, and you can basically determine how dense these particles have been over hundreds of years. And we are living in the densest particle radiation period of all time. Our world is changing right before our eyes.
And you offer both a physics perspective as well as the spiritual nature of these primordial cosmic rays. And you give 6
Mhm.
categories. Can you speak to that? Starting
Without
with the
going into too
particles
much
of
detail,
blessing.
without going into too much detail of the particles, there are different types of particles that emit from the sun, and these particles are some of them are intelligent. And scientists have wondered for a long time, well, where does our intelligence come from? When a baby is born, how does a baby develop consciousness? Well, is consciousness a particle? Is it a function of random firings of impulses from nerves? But these particles carry intelligence throughout space. We call some of them X factor particles, which carries the ability for an infant to evolve from a one-celled organism to a multi-celled organism to a 6 foot pound, 450 pound man, somebody like that. Or a particle can turn into a plant or a fish. All these things are influenced by the radiations that come into our world from the sun, but the sun isn't the largest generator of these particles. There are objects in space that generate more particles than the sun could ever imagine. So our scientists are just now beginning to understand the nature of intelligence, the nature of consciousness, the nature of power as we understand it in our domain. And a lot of it has to do with this primordial cosmic radiation that is being measured and recorded even as we speak.
And thank you for creating a course that teaches humanity how to assimilate and absorb the positive effects of the increased energy of the sun?
Yeah, we one of the things that my wife and I studied was sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Sunlight is a ubiquitous energy. It is everywhere all the time. Even when it's dark, we still are being protected and warmed by sunlight. We learned that you can take sunlight in and therefore take in those particles safely. And when you do that, your consciousness changes, your intelligence changes, your ability to understand principles that you just couldn't fathom before changes. It is a phenomenal process that you can learn safely, and it just changes your entire being. And that is in a course that we used to. We don't teach that course anymore. We have something called tablets now that we used to teach courses, but it's in a course that we have called the Living Soul, which is taught by one of our greatest teachers, Leanne Phillips, who learned from me and now teaches that course on her own. She lives in Hawaii. You can look her up online. The Living Soul course taught by Leanne Phillips.
Thank you for that. And Kathy, I see that you are a radio host and you started Tybro Productions as a publishing company. What would you like to say about that today?
Well, one of the things that we learned when he was selling those CDs off of his shelf is that there was potential here for something greater. And we had many discussions about what we wanted to see happen if we came up with a company that kind of developed kind of science and spirituality all in one and put them in what we call spiritual tools. And we decided that it would probably be best if I started the company and he would still be a psychiatrist until we could build the company up to the point where it could be a standing alone company and we could incorporate it. And then we could retire him from medicine. And that's exactly what we did. We started the company and we were trying to figure out a name. And at the time, .coms were very new at the time. So we wanted to call it Orbit, but Orbit.com, Orbit.gov, Orbit, everything was taken. So that's what Tybro is backwards. It's Orbit backwards with a Y instead of an I. So it's Tybro instead of.
I wondered what that was. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's
incredible. That's brilliant.
Tybro. Yeah. So we said, okay, well, we'll just reverse that and we'll call it Tybro.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. It's time for a quick breathing exercise as we take a short break. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Follow your breath as you tune in to your third eye at the center of your brow. By following your breath, you can enter the eternal now moment. One more deep breath. We're coming right back. Stay tuned for the second hour of Transcend the Matrix as we take a deeper dive into the cosmos, exploring galactic realms and parallel universes. You won't want to miss a moment of this journey through time, space, and beyond. As a special offering in the second hour, I will be taking questions from the chat room. So join the conversation, share your experiences, and if you like, I will tune in to celestial guides to bring you special messages from beyond the Matrix. So take a break, stretch and breathe, but don't miss a beat, because we are coming right back. Welcome back to the second hour of our show as we tune right back into my interview with Dr. Mitchell and Kathy Gibson.
We decided that the more that we could help people get to know who they are as divine beings, the better off our universe and society will become. And so that became our mission. Our mission was to try and help people connect with their higher selves so that they can then be a beacon for others, have the light shine through them, and that light would then affect others around them. And that's been our project for the last 16 years. We've actually been doing this work for a better part of 20 years, but that's what we love to do, is get people to know who they truly are, because that's the being that God sent down here in the first place, to find their purpose and to be able to help others find the better part of themselves, and then that would manifest in society. So we spend our life trying to come up with tools that would help people connect with themselves. A lot of people put a lot of blocks up because of their consciousness and their ego, and we try to produce products that would help break those things down so that they can get to know who they truly are as a divine being.
Thank you so much for dedicating your life to that. Media is certainly the most powerful way to reach as many people as you possibly can, because you can only see so many individual clients. Of course, speaking at events is another fantastic way, and you do an extraordinary job with that. However, reaching out through books and films and shows, radio shows, TV shows, it's a
Streaming
really powerful way to reach hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
We've had an incredible opportunity now with the television show, because it has been seen on the Word Network before. Now it's getting ready to be part of the Entertainment Studios networks. So it will be shown all over. And it's going to be reaching a lot of new people that we didn't feel that we could reach before.
And we're going to be on 7 networks under the Entertainment Studios brand, and over 25 channels. So we're going to be reaching over 100, probably 120 million people in the U.S. alone.
So yes, media is a perfect way to teach people and to reach people a lot more than we could doing seminars and just reaching, so many hundreds of individuals at a time. This time we can reach millions of people at a time, and it's at the perfect time in our lives and our careers, because the older we get, the more settled we are in, the more comfortable we are. We've experienced so many things that we can share with so many people, and it's just a wonderful time to be doing this kind of work.
Okay, we have a syndicated radio show that comes out of our home station, KCAA in California, and we're syndicated across the U.S. and Canada and the Caribbean, and so we reach probably 10, 15 million people that way as well. We've been doing the radio show, it'll be 4 years this September, and you can reach us actually on iHeart, Spreaker, Tuned In, TalkStream Live. What else?
I think that covers it. Yeah.
And KCAA streaming service. So you can reach us 24 hours a day on the radio if you go to iHeart or TalkStream Live. We're there all the time. Also, we have an app.
Yeah.
The Mitch and Kathy Show app on iTunes. That has all of our shows.
Well, you guys have worked very hard, dedicating so much of your time and energy and effort toward coming to this point of reaching millions. That is really incredible. And what a blessing to humanity at a time when this is, so necessary. We really are in extraordinary times. Can you talk about that for a moment? How are things different today than they were 10 years ago, energetically and spiritually?
I think that for the world as we see it, energetically, we're at a crossroads. As spiritual people, we have a responsibility to teach the world and guide the world. And yet, in spirituality, we find that you can still get attacked for your color. You can get attacked for your sex. Women have a different experience in spirituality than men. People of color have a different experience in spirituality than people who are not of color. So you being a leader in that regard. And that reflects in the rest of the world, because race and sexism and color still affect our planet, especially in this country. You can get shot for being the wrong color in the wrong place. As a woman, you have to be careful being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because, sometimes they blame the woman for what happens to her. And in spirituality, I think that we don't take the forefront in changing those things enough. I think that we tend to blame the victims too much, saying that it's their karma, it's just what's supposed to happen. And sometimes in spirituality, we don't acknowledge the fact that evil exists.
Mm-hmm.
Evil exists both at the government level, in the spiritual world, in our communities, and it has affected how the world is. We're being threatened with war again.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about having war with Iraq or Iran, in part because we have stood by and let dark forces do what they will with our world while saying, well, it's just the nature of things, it's just karma, it's just what's supposed to be. But our power as spiritual teachers and leaders, I think, should enable us to do more than that.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't just say, well, this is what's supposed to be, this is the will of the universe. It's really not. It's dark forces taking over because light forces do too little.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on in the world right now. You can see a lot of spiritual teachers being attacked, and the Me Too movement. A lot of people lost their entire careers, and a lot of times they didn't do anything. It's just that their supporters didn't come and support them and defend them and help them keep teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you do that enough, the wrong people get in office. The wrong policies get passed. We're facing now an abortion law that I think is unfair,
Mm-hmm.
but that happens because we do too little.
Mm-hmm.
And then we complain about what's being done. Those energies follow us when we don't take our power and stand in it against darkness.
Spiritual activism feels like a new concept that we really need to embrace, because there's so much of emphasis on the spiritual journey of being, right? Being in meditation, being present, holding space. But I think there also needs to be some doing that involves reaching out and really, using those gifts of higher consciousness, the expanded awareness and compassion and kindness and pure unconditional love that we do have for all living things and beings, that we really, direct that toward the higher good for humanity in an active role.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And instead of just saying, like you said, just speaking about what you believe should be, and not being afraid of the retribution of, because if that had happened throughout history, a lot of us wouldn't be here. There was a time when women couldn't own property. There was a time when your children were considered to be pretty much your slaves, and you could work them 10, 12 hours a day and not pay them. There was a time when slavery was the most common way to meet people of color. If that had not been stood up to, there's a lot of great souls in the world that would never have seen the light of day. We have to remember that our world has a spiritual obligation to evolve. And it's not going to do that by itself. We have to, as spiritual teachers, stand up for what is right and what should be, rather than just saying, oh, the gods will take care of it, or that's just what will be. That's not what's going to happen. We have to speak. We have to be there for those who don't have a voice, for the voiceless.
And we have to stand up and tell people who we are without the shame that comes along with it at times. Many people are, they're spiritual beings, but they're closeted. They're closeted because they don't want to face the retribution that many communities will kind of make them feel bad about not being Christian or being religious in one religion or another. But being a spiritual person, a lot of times that's why they keep it quiet, because most of their families are not spiritual people and they don't want to deal with all the stuff that comes along with that.
So we did a show in Carnegie Hall last summer, and we were the first spiritual teachers to do it since Yogananda. We had a packed house.
Sure did.
And it was a Friday night, and I remember when we first got on stage and looked out, you could hear a pin drop from that stage. It was
great
just perfect
stage.
acoustics.
Great stage.
But I also realized that half of our families didn't come.
Mm-hmm.
That they didn't come because they didn't think that spirituality belonged in the church. And so that's something that a lot of people that choose a spiritual path have to face.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to move forward in your spiritual growth, even if that means ostracizing people that are quote unquote your family. You will find new family. You will find people that will love you and support you that may not be blood related, but they will be there with you in those important moments, like Carnegie Hall. My family, all of them should have been there. My father should
All
have
of
been
mine
there.
should have been there.
All your sisters, all your brothers should have been there. You had one sister there. I had some family, but that kind of thing, those things matter in your spiritual path. When those things come up, when those events come up, you want people to support you that will be there, but that's when the divide emerges. Spiritual versus religious. And there really shouldn't be a divide in that sense. And they can't really tell you why they won't support you. It's just because you don't go to church. Well, we believe that the church is a temple of the soul, that you can have spiritual services in your home while you pray. You can have spiritual services on a mountain like you did. You can have spiritual services in the forest. You can have spiritual service just sitting on the grass, because you can't get away from God.
No.
God's going to be there no matter where there is. And you don't have to be Presbyterian or Catholic or Methodist or Baptist or Buddhist or Muslim. That doesn't matter. If God came to this world, you'd have to ask, well, what religion would God be? God is. That statement, I am, is a profound statement, because you can't put him in a box or in a building. And that, I think, that sort of teaching, that sort of thought will ultimately bring us together. Instead of making Sunday the most segregated time of the week, it'll be a time when we all get together and forget what the walls mean and just hold hands and meditate and share experiences. Because that's who we are. That's how we were created. Churches didn't exist for early man. Early man was too busy trying to survive, trying to go to church. He was worried about being eaten rather than where the steak was going to come from. So that made man come up with religions that looked at and appreciated nature better. We leave nature out of religion and spirituality too much in that sense. And I think that is part of what's going on in the world right now.
One other thing is, a lot of times people like to compartmentalize their life, saying they have their work persona, and then they have their family persona, and then they have their spiritual persona. And many of our teachings is we try to get them out of compartmentalize. You just are a spiritual being in all things that you do. And if you take that as something to live toward, then you won't feel like you have to hide in the closet about your belief system. And the more comfortable you are with who you are, people will accept you for that. But a lot of times, a lot of people that we meet, they are closeted spiritual people, which means that you're not really being yourself. And if anyone listening, if that's something that they've been doing, then that's what they need to work on, is to try and bring that divine self out. People will accept you for who you are as long as you're comfortable with who you are.
One of the things that people like to ask us, they like to say, how do you know the gods exist? Because we work and teach a lot about the gods. There are over 340 gods mentioned in the Bible. Jupiter, Baal, Zeus, Mercury are all mentioned in the Bible. And if you look in the Bible, you'll find that the Bible talks about gods as real beings. And it says, thou shalt not worship any other god before me. Well, if there were no other god, you wouldn't even have to say that. And we had comments or experiences where we actually saw gods, see them in our homes. And we've been doing miracle manifestations and offerings in front of our statues of the gods for years. Well, recently, the statues, which are made out of metal, the eyes opened in the statues. Yeah. And so every morning, every evening, we go down and do our offerings, the statues are looking at us. The statues, the eyes were closed, and now they have eyeballs, irises, corneas, everything, out of the blue. We've only seen that or heard about that happening in temples. But now, right downstairs, two of our statues have open eyes, which is a serious manifestation of how you could not even begin to do that, to draw that on them, because these statues they're old and they're very fragile. You couldn't even begin to do that. But there they are. It's for us, it is a confirmation that these gods, the gods are real, and that every time we do an offering, they're looking at us, we're looking at them, they're looking at us, we're looking at them, and say, hi, good morning, good evening.
They've come to life. They've animated, probably partially because you've created such a high frequency environment in your home, right? It's like
so.
everything is coming to life in a higher dimensional realm right there in your own home, changing the molecular structure of things, bringing them to life.
When people come and look at that, they say, wow, how did you do that? I said, well, we just did it. It came to life on its own. So it's a living piece of metal. How that even happens is beyond any understanding of physics and science, and I understand. It just, metal can't come to life, but there it is.
That's so remarkable. I sometimes think of those large heads in what's that off of Chile, that island? Easter Island. Thank you. And I often think, like, when even the statues in the ancient Mayan and Egyptian temples, I often think, like, if we enter a higher dimensional reality, they're all going to come to life.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true. That's true.
Yes. So much of what you have said today resonates with me just so powerfully on so many levels. And what you said about compartmentalizing, I have seen in many of my clients and friends and even family members, where I'm also encouraging them to bring their spirituality into every moment of their lives. So, you know, going to work, like my sister, for example, she's a deputy attorney general, but she's very spiritual, and she's discovering ways to bring her spirituality into her work. And she actually now calls it balancing karma. What she does. So, yeah, that's very beautiful. And I love what you're saying about unity consciousness. My teacher was Ram Dass for many years, and I would listen to his audio tapes, and the foundation of my spiritual path was really Buddhism. My sister invited me to the Buddhist path, and I went to many retreats, and I found it very beautiful. But I knew there was so much more, and I wanted to explore everything to do with science and spirituality and religion. And one day Ram Dass said, I am Christian, I am Buddhist, I am Muslim, I am Hindu. And I have goosebumps just saying that right now, because I thought, yes, that's it.
Right.
I am all of that and more. I am.
Right.
I am that I am.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Those were the words that God said to me when he came. He says, I am that I am. I'm like, what?
Wow.
That's exactly what he said, that I am. Like, okay, that's God. Let me get on my knees.
Yes. I've always thought that statement was so powerful. And when I do presentations, I'll have the whole audience say, repeat after me, I am, and then I am that I am. And it's usually how I end. Yes. Well, I am just so honored and blessed that you are going to be a part of our Sci-Spi.tv network. Your show, The Living Soul, sounds so amazing. And I just love the names of your episodes: The Soul Before Birth, The Creative Soul, The Enlightened Soul, The Soul in Attaching Spirits, The Soul in Near-Death Experience. I just can't wait to watch all of these episodes, and, you know, we'll feature them one at a time as the weeks go by, and I'll create your graphic today and get your show going as soon as possible. Thank you so very much for all you've been doing for decades to serve humanity in such a powerful, spiritually enlightened way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. We really appreciate it.
We're excited to join your family.
Since the beginning of time, civilizations have asked the questions: what is the human soul? How do we know it exists? Do we control our reality? Or are we actually living within a dream? What truly happens when we pass away? Join two of the world's leading experts in higher consciousness and discover the truth about the soul and the path to enlightenment. This is The Living Soul.
Welcome to our first segment of The Living Soul. My name is Dr. Mitchell Gibson.
And I'm Kathy Gibson.
And you might wonder, why are these two people in my house? Why are they on public television? What did they do to deserve to get a TV show? What is their expertise? Let's tell them who we are and why we're here.
Probably a good idea. As he said, my name is Kathy Gibson, and I am a spiritual teacher, entrepreneur, a mother, and a spiritual person. And for the first 40 years of my life, I grew up as a Christian. I was a preacher's daughter. My father was a Baptist minister, and as you can imagine, we were in church all the time.
What do you mean by all the time?
You know, you were there on Mondays, on Wednesdays. First you had choir practice, you had a youth meeting, you had, and I was teacher of the Sunday school. So
what do you do in church on a Wednesday?
Bible study.
Oh, Bible
Just
study.
had to have Bible study.
Okay.
So we did Bible study, and then, you know, in youth groups, there's always activities, and then, of course, Sundays where you go in the morning and afternoon, and sometimes there was evening service. So we were in church all the time.
Literally, except for Saturday.
Except for Saturday. Sometimes there were Saturday events. As you can imagine, my father being a pastor, my mother, she also had a mission. She was a songstress, and she sang in prisons and to those who were sick and shut in, and she felt the need that they should hear God's voice and word in song, and so she had a ministry of songs. And so we would support her, and she would go around. I didn't go into the prisons with her, but you know, it was just something that we did. And for the first 40 years of my life, it had tremendous meaning for me. It helped me in many ways, especially during some very tough times in my life. But then in 1995, I had an experience with the Creator that changed the trajectory of my beliefs. And I believe that because of that experience that I had, I became more of a spiritual person. I was more open-minded, and I started traveling the world and meeting different cultures and people, and it changed how I thought. And with the different practices that I have learned over the years, it has changed my outlook on life. I'm a very positive person. I believe that there are things that you can do with your consciousness that can change your life. And what we want to do in this broadcast is to introduce you to the things and experiences that we have had over the years and share those things with you, and hopefully they will change your life as well.
We have traveled to over 50 countries. We've lectured in more countries than I can count, more cities than we can count. And we've been doing this for 20 years, more than 20 years. I'm an author. My wife is an author. I'm a psychiatrist, a board-certified psychiatrist. I retired from the practice of medicine. I used to have a practice in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Mesa, Arizona for the better part of 20 years. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I learned that medicine is not the last answer in healing. And so when you look at the concept of healing and you look at the concepts of meditation and higher consciousness, what you find is that central to understanding those concepts is an understanding of the soul, the human soul. And when you look at the human soul, you try to find literature on it, you try to find what it looks like, you try to find some writing on the anatomy of the soul, you find that you can't find anything.
That's true.
There's not much writing about what the soul looks like. There's not much writing about the dynamics of the soul, how the soul looks in the body, how it functions in the body. More than anything, you find that there's a lot of philosophy written about the soul. There's a lot of conjecture, a lot of people writing about what they think it should do. There's very little about the actual dynamics and anatomy and structure and function of the soul. So this show, one of the shows we're going to do is going to show you in a little bit what a soul looks like, how it functions, what it looks like in the body. We're also going to talk about what the soul does. How is it different from the human spirit? And that's a question a lot of people ask.
To find out, stay tuned for the last half hour of Transcend the Matrix. Take a moment to breathe in all of this inspirational wisdom and knowledge, for you are the divine spark which emanates from the infinite source. You are that. We are that. Together, we are one. Take a few moments to absorb that divine truth, and we'll be right back. It's time to dive back in to the limitless and infinite as we transcend the matrix of limitations and dogma, as we reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Let's dive back into the infinite sea of pure consciousness.
We started out these seminars in Phoenix, Arizona. We did an 8-day seminar.
8 days.
8 days, 8 hours a day,
Yes.
looking at the dynamics of the soul. I remember when I was a kid, I used to fly outside of my body. I know now that it's called astral traveling, but I used to be able to go outside of my body and fly up into the sky. I would look at birds around me. I'd look at the clouds. I'd look down at cities. And I did this for years before I realized it wasn't something most people could do.
So you said you flew outside of your body.
And I made the mistake once of telling my pastor that I could do that. He sent me home and told my mother to whip me because he thought that I was possessed by the devil. And I said, I'm just flying outside of my body. He said, that's a power nobody should have. And so after that, I learned to keep it to myself and not tell anybody. But in traveling outside of my body, I found that there were domains around us that were populated by other beings. I saw fairies. I saw angels. I saw cities up in the sky. I saw other worlds that were closer to us than the planets that NASA tells us about. I saw that reality is not at all what we were taught about. And as my consciousness grew and as it evolved, I started writing down these things, and they became books like the bestseller, The First Darkness, 9 Insights, The Living Soul is our first book. And we wrote a movie script that we're now shopping to different places in Hollywood. We've had some offers from different studios. And so The Living Soul, this television show, is going to introduce you to many aspects of the soul. How the soul looks, different paranormal and supernatural events that go on around us. We're going to talk about the universe in a way that you probably haven't seen before. We'll intersperse videos, we'll have some questions, we'll have interesting slides that you might want to look at and memorize in some ways. But we're going to have a good time, and we're going to teach you in the same way that we've been teaching people all over the world for almost 20 years. Let's take the main body of the soul and sort of describe what it is. As you saw, the soul weighs about 1 gram, and some people it weighs a little more, some people it weighs a little less. There was an interesting experiment done in the early part of the 1900s by a physician who weighed not only animals, but he weighed people before and after death. And when he weighed them, he found that there was a consistent loss of weight from the body. And that loss of weight varied from animal to animal, person to person. He found that the soul had a definite weight. In some cases, he found that it weighed 21 grams. So the main body of the soul has weight. It has an appearance, which we showed you. It also has a covering.
And that covering is called the klippa. It is like a shell that holds in the light of God, which is in everything. And this covering, or as we would say, blankets or layers around the soul, is for our protection. And it is not until we start to evolve that those layers start to dissolve. Because if you go into outside and you see the sun and it's at high noon and it's very bright, it's very difficult to look at the sun with your eyes. You usually have to put on some sunglasses or put something over your eyes to lessen the intensity of that light. And that is exactly what it's like for the soul. God's light is so powerful that if you're not properly prepared in your consciousness and in your mind, that light can hurt you. It can be harmful. So as you start to take on transformation and start to evolve, the layers of that light start to dissolve, and that light then becomes a part of your being, and it starts to change you from within. And that is what the clip is all about. It's there for your protection, but as you grow, it starts to dissolve, and as it gets closer to all the covering being off, that's when you'll see that gem shape turn into a pearl shape, and that is your soul. It takes away the faceted gem shape and it turns it into a pearl shaped smooth object, and that shows your transformation and evolution.
That's why you see around the images of saints and holy people, you see this light coming off of them. Because as a person evolves, the energy of the soul shines through the body and you start seeing light around people. It's just a normal phenomenon. Actually, probably not normal because it's a sign of an evolved consciousness. The clipper is very much like blankets that you would put over a very bright light source. If all the energy of the soul was available for a person to just show to the world, it would be blinding. Everybody would be blinding everybody else. So the clipper is a covering over the soul that is very protective. The main body of the soul is a divine creation. It puts out a tremendous amount of energy. And this energy, we have to be protected from it. And over time, as we evolve, as Kathy said, the clipper dissolved, so we no longer need it. After the clipper dissolved, there's other areas of the soul that begin to come out and begin to show themselves to the world. There's two other parts of the soul, the sonum and the prima, which we need to talk about. The body of the soul puts out a tremendous amount of light. There's an ancient story about two men that wrote a book called the Zohar, which means a book of splendor, or the book of light. They wrote this book, and after they finished writing it, the power of God was so strong inside of them that they glowed with a blinding light. And when they went outside of the cave that they wrote it in, their light was so strong that it killed animals, it killed sheep, it killed people. So the angel Gabriel commanded that they go back into the cave for a number of months until the light calmed down. And the light emanated from an area of the soul called the prima, which is the divine light source of the soul itself. The prima is the main power source of the soul. It is contained within the main body of the soul, and it's the part of the soul that gives us the ability to absorb energy from the sun. We're going to have an upcoming show talking about how to take in energy from the sun safely, because if you don't take it in safely, it will blind you. You will die. Well, you won't die, but you burn out your retinas, and it's something that you can do safely, but you have to be taught. So prima you can take in from the universe, you can take it in from the sun, you can take it in from food, you can take it in from water, you can take it in from the air. It's the light source that empowers the soul itself.
Just imagine if you walk toward a closed door and you're getting ready to knock on the door and someone calls out your name, and you say, "How did you know it was me?" And the response is, "I could smell the confusion." It's a joke, but I'm talking about the sonin. But I'm talking about the sonin, which is your vibrational energy. It is the energy that the Creator gave you when He created you, and it's how He knows each and every one of us. But this vibration is something that you carry around with you, and depending on your consciousness, your emotions, your evolution, it determines what kind of life you're going to have. Because if you are a person who surrounds yourself with positive people, you go and do positive things, go to events where they're doing positive things in the events, then more than likely you're going to have a very positive life.
So the sonin is like a broadcast that we all put out, and it's how we know each other.
It is how we know each other.
Okay.
And the more you're around people, the easier it is to determine who that person is. Even if you can't see them, you can feel their energy. It's like someone walking into a room and you know they're a very negative, angry person. You don't even have to turn around and look. You know who that person is just from their energy that comes in the room.
I remember when I was practicing medicine, there were some people I would really look forward to them coming into the office. They were happy, they were upbeat. And there were some people I knew they were going to just be angry, down. And some people I knew that I would have to pick them up because they were depressing and they were suicidal every time I saw them. And so that signature vibration, I know very well what you're talking about.
Yeah.
People have a signature, and when you recognize it, that's the sonin that we're talking about.
And it's a wonderful way to determine whether or not you should be around certain people. because that energy is around them and you can feel it. Don't ignore it, ladies. If you're around some gentlemen and the energy's not positive, you need to keep on stepping because they're broadcasting what they're about. And the same thing can be said about yourself. So watch the things that you put in your mind, the things you listen to. Watch your emotional state because that all determines your own personal vibration. And the more positive it is, the more beautiful Sephirotic energy you're going to draw into your life.
So to recap, there are four main parts of the soul that we talked about. The main body of the soul, which carries the energy from God Himself, which is part of the energy that we use to function, basically. It drives respiration or breathing, it drives your heartbeat, pushes the blood through your body. And then there's the main body of the soul. It's the part of you that goes from one lifetime to the next. It's a part of you that travels into your body from the time of your birth. And it's a part of you that recreates your body from infancy to old age through adulthood.
There's the klippa, which is the shell or the layers around the soul that protects you from the light and energy and power of God until you're ready to transform yourself and really take your evolution seriously. It is there for your protection and is something that evolves and dissolves over time as you continue to grow. And then there's your vibration, your sonin that you put out that people know you by. And the more positive energy you're around, the more positive life you're going to have. The more negative, then the more negative life. So it's really the one that you choose to feed at that point.
There's a question that we get a lot of. The question is, how is the soul then different than the human spirit?
Well,
what is the difference?
A lot of people think that it's the same thing, but there is a difference between the soul and the spirit.
When you look at the human soul, you can look at the soul as a messenger between the spiritual world and the physical world, in much the same way that you can look at a cloud. Clouds carry a lot of moisture, and the only way that that moisture can get from the cloud to the earth is through a messenger, that messenger being a raindrop. So the cloud can be likened to a human spirit. The spirit never leaves the sky. The cloud never leaves the sky. The spirit never leaves the body of God. But the human soul leaves the cloud as a raindrop, using the metaphor, and it can go into water, it can go into a lake, river, or stream, go into a human body, it can be consumed by animals, but it is a part of the sky that comes to earth. The soul is a part of the spirit that comes to earth and therefore becomes part of the cycle of life.
One thing I really like about what you just said was that the spirit is always with the body of God, because for no matter what's going on in your life, living as a soul, a person with a human soul, part of you is always with God. And I know a lot of people feel lonely out there and they feel like there's no one that they can count on, there's no one that's with them, they don't have any family or friends. Knowing that that part of your essence is always with God and that God is always with you, He's inside of you, that should give you such comfort that no matter what you're facing on a day-to-day basis, that should give you reason to want to get up every day. So this is the part of our show that we want to make sure that everybody understands that this is what we're going to be teaching about. The human soul and the things that evolve us and transform us into divine beings, which each and every one of us are.
So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a brand new show for you next week. You've just now experienced the living soul.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining the Living Soul. I think a lot of people are wondering, how do we know all this information?
Well, we are new to our viewing audience, and this is a brand new show. And our premise is looking at different aspects of the soul before we're born, the soul during life, the soul after life, and also different supernatural and paranormal phenomena that are related to the soul as it goes through its journey of life. And we're just going to talk to people today about our concepts of what happens to the soul before birth. That's the title of this particular show. But there are probably people out there wondering, how the heck do you know what you know?
How could anyone know what happens to the soul before birth?
Well, there's theories in many different aspects of religion, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, Taoism, all the different aspects. There's hundreds of religions and there's many different aspects of and thought about what the soul is. But before we get to that, let's talk to people about how we know what we know about what we're talking about.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think in In fact, I know that the last show we talked a lot about our introduction, who we were, how we came to this point in our lives and our careers. And I think I had mentioned in my story that in 1995 I had an experience that really changed the trajectory of my spiritual beliefs. And I think it's important for people to understand exactly what could happen to a person that would change their beliefs
Well,
and
they
their
need to know that
foundation.
you're college educated. You
Hmm.
went to USC, the USC.
Go
Go
Trojans.
Trojans, whatever. They need to know that you are a business executive,
Hmm.
that you're a mother of two children, that you've been married, and that you have a very successful business. You are, as far as the American dream, you have realized the American dream. But then you started having spiritual experiences that redefine who you are and how you know what you know.
That is correct. Like I said in the last show, I had been a Christian for 40 years, and I grew up as a preacher's daughter. But what happened to me in 1995, during a time where I was really going through a tough time in my life, I was getting prepared for a divorce. And I guess it was so much of a strain on me that the Creator Himself decided to come and visit me,
Like the creator, as in God.
as in God.
God,
God,
the creator,
God the
came
Creator
to see you.
came to see me.
Okay, tell us about that.
Okay, well, He came in the form of a golden mist. And in this mist was a telepathic conversation that I had with him. But this mist was filled with a lot of different energy and information, along with just a phenomena of the Creator being there. First of all, it was filled with love and compassion and joy. And there's no way that you can be inside of this mist and not feel like you're a little baby being hugged very closely by your parent. And during that time, it wasn't a very long visit, but there was what's called a download, where you get a series of information that goes into your mind, your higher mind, also your unconscious, subconscious, and preconscious mind, that you're not quite sure of the information that's being put there. But as you go through life, it starts to become clear what that information was and how you process it and how you use it in your life.
And other times they would have called that a Gnostic experience, a direct experience with the consciousness of the universe that we know as God. You experience a direct conversation with the universe. That is pure Gnosticism.
That is. And with that gnosis came a lot of knowing, a term that you just know things. And that information was put inside of me while I felt like I was being rocked like a baby in the conversation that I had with God. And it took me a few years before I really understood what had occurred between me and the Creator. But I believe that is the reason why my change in my belief system happened like it did. And I think it's the reason why I was able to accept it. Because a lot of people have phenomenon that happens to them and they're not really sure how to deal with this experience. They don't want to tell people because they're fearful of how people will respond or take that information.
Well, our school system in the Western science really teaches us to go to a library, memorize facts, and then go take a test. That
Mhm.
is the epitome of what we call learning. But people like Einstein, people like Edison, many of the greatest scientists and philosophers would sit and do what they call thought experiments,
Mhm.
where they would sit and think about a problem,
Mhm.
they would think about a question or an idea, and they gave themselves the luxury of letting the universe give them feedback about their thoughts.
Mhm.
Einstein would sit and he would think for hours, sometimes days or weeks, about one question.
Mhm. And how many people were willing to do that?
Well, sometimes when I was in school, we were going, especially medical school, we were going through so many things so quickly that there were 100 different times where I thought, I wish I could think about this problem.
Mhm.
I wish I could study this idea longer.
Mhm.
I wish that I could take this concept and just take it all the way through instead of just rushing, making sure I pass the test and rushing to the next thought. The concept of gnosis, the concept of divine understanding, the concept of looking at the universe as an entity that we can interact with, I think elevates the art of learning.
Mhm.
It elevates the concepts of understanding information rather than just being factual data that you ingest and then digest and then regurgitate for a test. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's an elegance that exists beyond the concept of simply doing that and interacting with the universe directly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are facts, there are elements of data, there are elements of understanding out there that we can't get to if we don't give ourselves the luxury, in just the way that you did,
Mm-hmm.
of sitting with the universe
Mm-hmm.
and allowing the universe to interact with us, not only emotionally, but intellectually. I think that's a beautiful example. And that's really the way that we get information.
It
We
is.
interact with the universe and we help understand the universe in that way. Religion, regardless of what religion you want to look at, has a lot of different takes on what happens to the soul before, during, and after the process of birth. Whether you're looking at it from a Hindu standpoint, Buddhist standpoint, Judaism, Christianity, they all have a different angle on what happens to the soul. Some people believe that we don't have a soul.
Mm-hmm.
And some people believe that the soul exists before birth. Some people believe that life only starts once the egg is fertilized by the sperm. And you have to look at, what do you really believe?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can allow scientists to control our belief systems. We can allow our pastor or our rabbi or our priest to control our beliefs. But then I'd like to ask, well, what do I believe really about what happens to the soul? Because I believe I have a soul. I believe that I existed before I came into this world. I believe that the memories that I have that don't pertain to this life probably came from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a trained scientist. I'm board certified in medicine. I have a college degree, I have a medical school degree, I have a residency degree, and I have post residency training. I also have read probably thousands of books on many different subjects. But the question of where my soul comes from, where did it come from before I was born, it still haunts me
Mm-hmm.
because I don't believe that we are a summation of our thoughts. I believe that the soul has thoughts, it has emotions, it has experiences that just are not explained by the things we read in books, about the things that other people tell us. I mean, what do you believe?
Well, in our last show, we had explained the difference between the soul and the spirit. And what we said was that the spirit is like a cloud and it never leaves the body of God. But what we didn't say is that the spirit actually creates the soul, and that soul then kind of takes a review of each lifetime. I happen to believe in reincarnation. So I think the soul goes through a review process. And during that process, it decides on the things that it wants to accomplish in this lifetime, what it wants to work on to perfect itself. And I think that's where the soul is predated or pre
Existent.
existent, and it comes into this world. It chooses a father first, and then a mother, and then it somehow gets those two people together, and it helps to form the body of the baby. It doesn't inhabit the baby right away, but as it gets closer to the baby being born, I believe that the soul helps in that process of building the body, building the mind of the child, and then it goes ahead and it takes right around conception, or not conception, but birth. It goes into the baby's body, and then it starts to control uh, different aspects of the body, and it continues to do that as you get older and older and older until you leave this world for
What,
another life.
what you just said reminds me of the brilliant work by a psychiatrist by the name of Ian Stevenson.
Mm-hmm.
And in his work, he talked a lot about the research that he did with thousands of people all over the world. And in his research, he found that there is a science behind the concept of being born, that we exist not only in this life, but we exist in other states of being before we come to this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we come back, we'll discuss some of the work that he found, some of the facts that he found, and some of the things that are consistent from one life to another: birthmarks, reincarnation, the signs that come into the world before we are actually born. And so we'll just look at some of those things and talk about them when we come back.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to my interview with Dr. Mitchell and Kathy Gibson, and also for listening to excerpts from their incredible series, The Living Soul, which you can watch on Sci-Spi.tv, SCISPI.tv. Click on the Beyond the Matrix channel, and then you can click on their show, The Living Soul, and watch these episodes of The Living Soul, like the soul before birth, the soul during sleep and dreams, the creative soul, the criminal soul, the enlightened soul, and more. Like I said earlier, right now we are offering a free 2-month subscription to Sci-Spi.tv as our gift to humanity during this global crisis. And thank you so much for tuning in to Transcend the Matrix right here on Truth Frequency Radio. Please feel free to visit me on my website at SuzanneRossWellness.com, where you can check out my books, Wake Up and Rise Up, and also the sessions that I offer. You can also download audio initiations, meditations, and activations. I am sending love and many blessings to all. Namaste. Joining me on this inspirational journey into the light of a higher way of being as a multi-dimensional soul, expressing yourself in many different realms and dimensions. It's time to reunite your fragmented soul aspects, activate your dormant DNA, and step into your perfect divine blueprint. I would be honored to guide you on your journey. Just visit me at SuzanneRossWellness.com. I invite you to tune in to my internet television network, Sci-Spi.tv. That's SCISPI.tv. I'll see you on the air next Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific.